If my mother ever loved me, she sure had a strange way of showing it. That was the first thing I thought as I stepped into her house. The air inside was still, like it had been holding its breath since the moment she left. Nothing had moved. Her shoes still sat by the front door. Her favorite coffee mug with the chipped handle was still on the kitchen counter. The old floral curtains were drawn halfway, letting in narrow beams of Texas sunlight that lit up floating dust, like the room itself was trying to remember how to breathe. It had been 3 days since Mom died. Just a sudden stroke. No warning. No goodbye. I got the call from the hospital in the middle of a Zoom meeting and dropped everything to drive across town. By the time I got there, she was already gone. I didn't cry. Not then. Not during the funeral. Not even now. That's not to say I wasn't sad. But grief has a funny way of shape-shifting when your relationship with the person was complicated. And complicated doesn't even begin to describe it. My mother, Margaret Whitmore, was not cruel. She wasn't abusive or absent. She just didn't know how to be close. She wasn't the mom who gave hugs or said, "I love you" at bedtime. She never sat me down to talk about boys or school or heartbreak. She provided food, clothes, structure. But warmth? That was always in short supply. I used to envy my friends with mothers who gushed over every drawing, every dance recital, every broken heart. My mom never did that. Her way of showing love was putting an extra boiled egg in my lunchbox or reminding me not to slam the door. It wasn't enough, not for me, not back then. Now here I was, 39 years old, standing in the living room of her house, the place I grew up, tasked with sorting through the remains of her life. It wasn't a big house, 1 story, 2 bedrooms, a porch that creaked when you walked across it, and an overgrown backyard filled with potted plants. So many plants. That part never changed. Mom was obsessed with them. Spider plants, succulents, orchids, ferns. She named them, talked to them like pets. I used to roll my eyes every time I saw her out there in her floppy sun hat, misting the leaves and humming some tune from the 60s. I was wiping down the windowsill in the living room when I noticed the orchid. It was her favorite, a soft lavender bloom that somehow stayed alive longer than any of the others. I reached for the watering can out of obligation, not affection. That's when I saw it. A corner of something sticking out beneath the soil. Not a root. Paper. I set down the can and carefully dug around it with my fingers. It was a small piece of folded yellowed notebook paper. Faintly damp but still legible. I unfolded it. March 12th. Sarah had her violin recital today. I followed her inside the school, but I didn't stay. I was too embarrassed. I don't speak well, and I didn't want to humiliate her. So I stood outside and listened through the cracked gym door. She was beautiful. She doesn't know I heard. But I did. And I cried. I sat back on the floor, stunned. The words didn't make sense at first, but the handwriting was unmistakable. It was Mom's. I read the note again, slower this time. My chest tightened. I remembered that recital. 7th grade. I remembered walking out and seeing no one in the audience for me. I went home and didn't say a word to her that night. I thought she didn't care. Thought she hadn't bothered to come. But she had. I looked at the orchid again. Something in me shifted. That night I didn't sleep. I kept turning the note over in my hands, as if staring at her words long enough might give me the answers I hadn't had for decades. Why did she write that? Why hide it? And was there more? The next morning, instead of continuing with the paperwork for the house sale, I walked straight to the backyard. The air was already thick with humidity, and the cicadas were starting their daily chorus. I crouched beside another plant, one of her aloe vera pots, and started gently scooping the top layer of dirt with a spoon. There it was. Another folded note, tucked just under the surface. I opened it slowly. September 3rd. I saw Sarah crying in her room today. I didn't ask why. I didn't know how. I just left a cup of tea outside her door. When she opened it, I had already gone to bed. I wish I had said something. Anything. I felt my eyes burn. That was the week I got dumped by my college boyfriend. I remember thinking nobody in the world cared. There were more. In the jade plant by the patio, Sarah got accepted into the university. I didn't show it, but I was so proud I cried in the laundry room. In the old watering can, now rusted and dry. She called me cold during an argument. Maybe she's right. But I'm not made of stone. I just don't know how to be soft the way she needs me to be. Each note chipped away at the version of my mother I had carried for years, the distant, unemotional woman who never really knew me. She did know me, maybe even better than I knew her. That afternoon, I brought all the plants into the living room and lined them up like a quiet army of witnesses. I began checking each one, digging gently, hands covered in soil and memories. I found 11 letters in total, each one a moment, confession, a regret, but none of them were for show. She never intended for me to read them, at least not while she was alive. That's what made them honest, raw, vulnerable in a way she never allowed herself to be in real life. She had loved me, fiercely, quietly, imperfectly. I sat on the floor surrounded by pots, letters, and the kind of silence that no longer felt empty. For the first time in years I let myself cry, not just for her death, but for every moment we missed, every word left unsaid, every misinterpreted silence that now meant something entirely different. And that was when I realized my mother had been speaking to me all along, just not in the language I expected. I started seeing her everywhere. In the scent of the rosemary bush by the kitchen window. In the smudges on the pantry door where her fingers must have brushed over the years. In the quiet way the morning light filled the hallway, just the way she used to like it. My mother was gone, but now she was everywhere. It was ironic, really. I had never felt more connected to her than after she died. The next few days blurred into a pattern. Wake up, skip breakfast, dig through the house like an archaeologist of emotions. I wasn't looking for old photos or heirlooms anymore. I was looking for her voice, her heart. And then I found the notebook. It was tucked behind a row of dusty cookbooks in the kitchen cabinet, rubber banded and wrapped in a floral kitchen towel. I don't know what made me look there. Maybe I was just chasing shadows at that point. But as soon as I held it, I knew. On the first page, in slanted cursive that wobbled slightly at the ends, it read, "Things I wanted to tell my daughter." I sank into one of the kitchen chairs and turned the pages slowly, hands trembling. There were no paragraphs, no dates. Just a list. 82 entries. Numbered. Sometimes funny, sometimes heartbreaking, sometimes awkward. But always unmistakably my mother. Number 4. I still remember the way you smelled as a baby, like milk and sunshine. Number 19. I was never angry when you failed. I was angry at myself for not knowing how to help. Number 33. I saved every birthday card you ever made me until the dog chewed them up in 2009. I cried more than I should have. I smiled at that one. I remembered that dog. I hated him for chewing up my shoes. I didn't know he'd also destroyed her memories. Number 51. I didn't attend your engagement party because I thought he didn't deserve you. That one hit hard. I had assumed she didn't come because she didn't care. I didn't realize she was protecting me in her own quiet way. And then I reached entry number 72. I never said, "I love you," because I didn't grow up hearing it. It felt foreign in my mouth. But I hope one day, you can be the kind of mother who says it freely. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I buried my face in my hands and wept like a child, loud, aching sobs that clawed their way out of my chest. All the years I'd spent resenting her for not being affectionate, for being cold, for leaving me emotionally stranded. And now here she was, more emotionally naked than I ever imagined. That night I sat in the living room surrounded by her plants, her notebook on my lap, rereading every entry until the words became a part of me. In the silence, I whispered the words I wish I'd said when I had the chance. "I love you too, Mom." 1 year later, the backyard of my new home in South Austin is filled with plants. Not because I have a green thumb, believe me, I've killed more than I've kept alive, but because something about digging my hands into soil, watching things grow, makes me feel closer to her. There's a small lemon tree in the far corner that I planted the day I found out I was pregnant. Yes, pregnant. I didn't expect it, not at 39, not after everything. But life, it seems, has its own rhythm. It doesn't ask if you're ready. It just hands you a new page and says, right. Sometimes I still hear her in my head. Don't forget to water the basil. You're using too much Miracle-Gro. Tea solves more than you think. And sometimes I talk back, out loud, just in case she's listening. Her plants live on with me. I brought them all home after settling her estate. They line the windowsills and bookshelves now, watching over me the way she once did, silently and consistently. I even talk to them. My husband thinks I'm a little nuts. He might be right. What he doesn't know, what no one knows yet, is that I've started writing my own letters. Every time something happens, a doctor's appointment, a dream I had, a song I think my child might like someday, I write it down on a small card. I fold it carefully and tuck it under the soil of a plant. Not all of them, just a few special ones. I don't know if my daughter will ever find them. I don't know if she'll need them. But if she does, they'll be there. Not because I'm trying to hide from her, but because I know now. Love doesn't always come dressed in loud declarations and perfect timing. Sometimes it shows up in dirt under your fingernails and the scent of rosemary after a rainstorm. As for me, I say I love you now. I say it every day. To my husband. To my unborn child. To the memory of a woman who never said it, but loved me more deeply than I ever gave her credit for. Before I finish this entry, I'll leave you with this. My mother never spoke about feelings. Never said much at all. But she left me everything I needed to hear. And now I'll do the same for my daughter. Because love, real love, isn't always loud. Sometimes it just waits, quiet and patient, buried beneath the soil until one day it blooms. If this story touched you, think about the quiet ways your family might have been loving you all along. What details did you overlook? What memories are waiting to be reread with new eyes? Maybe it's time to write your own letters.